الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين المنتجبين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. إليكم من الجنة الإمام في شيخ الصلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
His protection and well-being, take a second with knowledge.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Inshallah, each and every one of us becomes a true and close companion of our beloved Imam. We take the third one even knowledge.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
What we've been trying to discuss over the course of these few nights that we're together is related to the obedience that we've got to have towards Ahlul Bayt. We mentioned that one of the Quranic facts that we have with regards to the Ahlul Bayt is obedience. أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. The matter of obedience with regards to the Ahlul Bayt has been the area that most of the believers have failed. Meaning that's the area that we find most problematic. There have been plenty of believers that have had good love for the Ahlul Bayt. They have felt love with regards to the Ahlul Bayt. But what they failed to do was to obey the Ahlul Bayt the way they were supposed to. And we mentioned plenty of stories with regards to that. But we mentioned the obedience that we are supposed to be involved with regards to the Ahlul Bayt has a twist to it. It's a bit more complicated for us compared to the time of the presence of the Ma'soom. And that's why anytime a taklif, a responsibility, becomes more complicated, the rewards of that taklif are also going to be more. That only makes sense. That's why we said, the hadith of Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, that the people during the time of the occultation of the Imam are going to be the best of people. Those who believe in the Imam, those who are awaiting his coming, and the reason why they are the best is because of this fact that we are explaining. It says, the twist that we have with regards to obedience towards the Imam is we don't have the Imam in every instance telling us you need to do this or the other. Right? You don't have the Imam coming to you and telling you, hey, this is what you need to do now at your center. Something happened globally. What stance should we take? The Imam isn't coming and telling you what to do. The poppy issue. Okay. That's an issue that's come out, right? So what are we supposed to do? The Imam isn't ready to tell you right now exactly what you need to do. The complication is, we don't only need to be obedient at our day and age, we need to figure out what their command and their order is in the first place, then obey. That's why the Imam said, the reason why they're the best of the people is because their aql will grow with the help of God. Their understanding will grow with the help of God to the extent. their understanding will grow to an extent where the absence of the Imam will be the same as the presence of the Imam. We interpret that in this way. They don't need the Imam to be present there to tell them, hey, you need to do this. They'll figure it out. We said this is important. We need to try to build this, foster this in ourselves, in order to be the best of those people. We want to be those that are as-sabiqeen ila iradatihi. We want to know before the Imam even tells us. Let me tell you the story so we can get the idea. You see, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whenever he would come to Medina, he would first go and visit the house of his daughter, the lady Fatima al-Zahra, salamullah. He was so the lady Fatima al-Zahra had put up a curtain there. The believers were in tight circumstances financially. She had received a gift. She wasn't extravagant in any way. She didn't do anything wrong. The only thing was, this curtain wasn't something that everybody could afford. And this is the daughter of the Holy Prophet. He came to the door and saw this, and he just turned away and left. He didn't say anything, he didn't make a face, he just left. Lady Fatima al-Zahra figured out that the issue is this curtain. She took it off, folded it, sent it to the Holy Prophet. This is apparently one of those instances that the Holy Prophet has said, Fidaha Abuha. May her father be sacrificed for her. This is the intelligence we need to have. Say salawat, please. Without being told, figure it out. How do we do this? We said, in order to do this, we need to build a structure in our minds, a framework of how the Ahlul Bayt dealt with different circumstances, what were the main principles by which they made their decisions, and after that, fit in all the details that you hear within that structure. The problem is sometimes we hear a lot of details, bits and pieces. The Imam did this here, he said that there, and it's just a big mess. Okay? It's not structured. You don't know when to do this. You hear of the Holy Prophet respecting somebody in a certain way, and hearing a word of the Holy Prophet with regards to that. Or a certain behavior towards the Imam. One of the questions that was asked, let me give this, so we can understand. They said, Imam Hussein salamullah alayhi said, the likes of me will never pledge allegiance with the likes of Yazid. This is one point. You've heard this. Imam al-Hussein, before Yazid came to power, what was his stance with the governor and the government of the time? Who was before Yazid? Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Does anybody in this room think Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan is any better than Yazid? Why didn't Imam Hussein say the same thing to Muawiyah? You hear that and they say, oh, this is a general principle from the Imam. We don't fit it into a structure that has the foundations, the pillars, and then fit everything where they belong. Because if we don't do that, we get confused. So Imam Hussein said, you need to speak out against injustice. So as soon as I see somebody doing something wrong in the center, I need to treat them the way Imam Hussein treated Yazid. Get on to them, shout at them. This is a believer. There's a difference between these. We have to figure out what those principles are, based on which the Ahlul Bayt made decisions. Use that as a framework so that we can figure out what we need to do at this day and age. We talked about two of them. One of them was the insistence upon being or revolving around haqq and the truth. Always trying to see what is haqq and what is batil. And we have the hadith that says, look, things are, in a sense, they are black and white. It is haqq and batil. I may be confused, but because I'm confused, I'm not going to go around and say, it's actually gray. No, it's gray for me, because I'm not able to distinguish. I'm not able to figure out if this is haqq or batil. So one of the principles was looking for what is haqq. Looking for what is true and what is the truth of the matter, and following through with that. The other that we started last night was that the top priority for the ma'sumin is deen, religion. And what we did last night was we defined it. What is the definition of the deen? I don't want to run through the whole thing, because that's what pretty much we talked about last night. But briefly, what we mean by deen, that the Ahlul Bayt prioritized and put on top of the list of their priorities, was not books, is not paper and pen that contains divine words that we refer to as the Quran. That's not what he's talking about when he says religion. Deen. When we say they preferred deen over all other priorities, it means that deen which is present within each of the individual believers, that is the deen. We mentioned the verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب ولكن البر من آمن بالله. The verse doesn't say ولكن البر إيمان بالله. The verse says, a rough translation, righteousness isn't facing the direction of the east or the west. Righteousness is the one who believes in God and in the day of judgment and so on and so forth. The verse continues. It doesn't say righteousness isn't praying in this direction or the other direction. Righteousness is faith. It started with action, facing this. It didn't talk about people. So then when it wants to say what righteousness is, that it doesn't matter what words are, what the book says. What's important is what the person is. Is a person a believer or not? The deen that the Ahlul Bayt wanted to preserve is not a book that they wanted to preserve. They wanted the presence of religion in the hearts of the people. The second step we took from that is to go and say what we mean by the presence of deen and religion in people is not the rituals of the deen. Deen and religion, it does have rituals. There are certain practices, certain activities that are supposed to be done on a daily basis. Some of them are annual, like fasting and Hajj or Umrah. These are different rituals. These rituals are not the essence of deen. That's one of the issues that caused the people in Safi to get confused. The people in the battle of Nahrawan, they got confused. Like these people, these Khawarij, they know Quran better than us. They pray more than us. They fast more than us. They prostrate more than us. These are all rituals. They got confused. Like, why should we kill these people? Why should we fight these people? He said, the essence of their faith is screwed. This is not real faith. This is not real deen. So then, after understanding that, we wanted to talk about the priority. What do we mean that the Ahlul Bayt put this on top of their list of priorities? Recite a salawat, please.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
We see that the Ahlul Bayt were active in many different arenas. For example, one of the things that we constantly see in the history of the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt are battles between who? Between the Holy Prophet and the Mushrikeen. Between the Holy Prophet and the Jews. This is something that you will see. The first battle is the battle of Badr. Then it is Uhud. You have other battles. In the 6th year, one of the things that happens is the Holy Prophet suddenly says, believers, let's go for Umrah. Where the Mushrikeen are. The Mushrikeen that they've been fighting against for all these years. And the Mushrikeen who have taken what belonged to the believers, taken the life of some believers, fought the believers, did whatever they could to get rid of the believers, get rid of even the Holy Prophet. Now, we want to go to their stronghold and perform Umrah. And the Holy Prophet said, we're going to go without weapons. No weapons. No swords, no bows, no arrows, no spears, no nothing. We are going to go barehanded. And they went to and arrived in an area called Hudaybiyah. The Holy Prophet signed a truce with the Mushrikeen, in which the Holy Prophet agreed, first of all in the writing of it, not to put Rasulullah with regards to himself. He agreed not to even put that there. The Mushrikeen didn't like that there. Said if we believed you to be the Prophet, we wouldn't even have an issue with you. Holy Prophet, it's okay. The believers at that point got confused. They got confused. The Holy Prophet is giving this right that he has up here. This is one instance of it. I don't want to talk about the result of that. The result of that, very briefly, is when that truce, that peace treaty was signed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verses, إِنَّا فَتَحْنَا لَكَ فَتْحًا مُبِينًا. This is the greatest victory. The peace treaty. The believers thought that they had lost things. But how that was a victory, I don't want to get into it. The idea is, you see the Holy Prophet fighting in one instance. The other instance, he's even willing to give up the idea of his Risala completely. You don't need to put that there. We see Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullah alayhi. The Holy Prophet going through the trouble, bringing thousands of people together in Ghadir, setting the scene where he's going to announce Man kuntu mawla fa aliyun mawla. He goes through all of that. He emphasizes to the believers, your Amir after me is Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullah alayhi. He talks about all of that. He keeps repeating that. They get to Medina. 2 months and 10 days approximately after that, the Holy Prophet passes away. When he passes away, you see that certain people go into Saqifa, they set up Saqifa, and they talk about who they want to have to lead. And you know the result of that. People pledged allegiance in Saqifa with the first Khalifa, Abu Bakr. That happened. Amir al-Mu'mineen is involved with the burial ceremony of the Holy Prophet. Then he gets involved with collecting all of his writings of the Quran and putting it in the order that it needs to be. Then he comes out, and then you have the whole scene where they want him to pledge allegiance, and he talks to them about Qadiyah, this, that, the other. The end result of that is this. The Holy Prophet spent so much time discussing that matter, emphasizing it. At this point, Amir al-Mu'mineen said, okay, if you guys don't want it, you're going to be the losers. I'm not going to be losing in this equation. You guys are the losers. But if you don't want it, then I won't pursue it. He quit. For 25 years, he only advised and criticized and helped the government for 25 years. Then, after 25 years, they came again to him and they begged him to come and lead. them, and so on and so forth. He accepted that. At this point, you see Amir al-Mu'mineen, when they challenge him, when they challenge his khilafah, after they have pledged allegiance, he goes and is willing to fight people, and people get killed in the battle of Jamal, people get killed in the battle of Siffin, plenty of people, thousands of people. In the battle of Nahrawan, many people get killed. Was the matter of wilayah and khilafah something that we're going to fight for, or is it something that we're not going to fight for? Can you get that clear for us? Imam Hassan Salamullah alayhi, they pledge allegiance with him. The respect of Imam al-Mujtaba recite a nice salah. For around 6 months, he tries to battle Muawiyah. Believers do not follow through. Imam al-Mujtaba agrees to something that is called a peace treaty. Okay. I will not discuss the details of this peace treaty. You know why? Because you guys will not believe me. You will not believe me. I speak of this experience. Even if I provide you 10 sources, you will not believe me. No, there's no way Imam al-Mujtaba did this. I'll just call it a peace treaty. Okay? To believe us of that. After all this time fighting, Imam al-Mujtaba agrees to a peace treaty. For the rest of his 10 years of imamah, he does not fight Muawiyah. Imam al-Hussein, 10 years of his imamah, first 10 years of his imamah, he doesn't challenge Muawiyah's rule. He criticizes some of the decisions. He gets on to him for killing the Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Hujr ibn Adi, and others. That was part of the peace treaty. You're not supposed to be killing the Shia. He protested the bay'ah that Muawiyah was taking from people for his son Yazid right after the shahada of Imam al-Mujtaba. Muawiyah started right after the assassination of Imam Hassan. He started gathering people for the allegiance. Imam Hussein protested in Medina. He made a big deal out of it. He caused many people to question pledging allegiance. In the end, Muawiyah played a trick, and many people, most people, pledged allegiance. For 20 years, these two imams, they didn't do anything. Then when Yazid comes to power again, Imam al-Hussein says, I'm not pledging allegiance. And he's willing to go and have himself and all of his children, everybody killed, but he will not pledge allegiance. So, is this something that we're supposed to protest even if we are going to get killed? Or is this something that we're not supposed to do that? What is it? What's the situation here? What's the principle? God forbid, God forbid, God forbid. Are they just deciding one day, waking up like, oh, let's fight for this. Next day, let's not fight for this. Or is there a principle for this? The principle is the Ahlul Bayt, the Holy Prophet, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, and all of the Imams. The main concern they had was not government in and of itself, although government is very important, I'll get to it. We'll see that. But the main concern, the top of the priority list, is not government. It's not khilafah. The top of the priority list is keeping Islam in people. That's the priority. Now let's look back at that history. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi in Mecca begins to train real believers. Believers that were willing to give their life but not to accept to become mushrik, the father and mother of Ammar. bin Yasir. Yasir, if I remember her name correctly, Sumayya. Could be wrong on that. They were willing to give up their life, but not their faith. Strong faith. Bilal al-Habashi went through torture, not going to give up faith. Ahad, I only believe in the one God. Will not give up faith. The Holy Prophet started building these individuals. Okay? The important thing was that these individuals with that strong faith in them. He goes to Medina. Now, before he goes to Medina, what needs to be known is that there are many believers from Medina, a good number, not a dominant majority of the Madanis, or the Yathribis to be more accurate, at that time it's called Yathrib. There are some of Aus and Khazraj that come to Mecca, they hear about the teachings of the Prophet, they come and they accept the religion. The Holy Prophet sends one of his companions over there to Yathrib and they train some of these believers. They came a couple of times. In one instance, they came and they pledged allegiance to the Holy Prophet and they said, we are willing to give. Our allegiance with you is such that we prefer your life over ours, your property over ours, your command over ours, your desire over ours. Whatever you say, it's over. Then when they wanted to assassinate the Holy Prophet goes to Medina. As soon as he gets to Medina, the Holy Prophet establishes a government. For what purpose? What is the government for? The government is to be able to preserve this deen in the hearts of these people, provide grounds for more believers to come into Islam and have their faith. That's the purpose of that government. That's what he does. All the mushrikeen, the heads of the mushrikeen that created an atmosphere for the average Arab of the time of Jahiliyyah not to really understand what Islam is about, the Holy Prophet fought them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Holy Quran that وَالْفِتْنَةُ أَكْبَرُ مِنَ الْقَاتِلِ. The fitna of the mushrikeen that caused the average Arab not to be able to see the truth, that's worse than death, worse than killing. That's why today, again, the superpowers of the world that are preventing people from getting the real knowledge of the deen, they present Islam in a way with their own creations, with their own Wahhabi creations, that they then get involved with terrorist activities, and then they show it on TV and they emphasize this is not just a man, this is a Muslim that does this. Okay, to present that type of an image of Islam. This is Saddun an Sabilillah. This is called fitna. This is why the average English, the average Scottish, the average German, the average American doesn't even think about looking into Islam. This is the same thing that the mushrikeen at that time were doing. The Holy Prophet fought these people to allow for more and more people to come to know the reality of Islam. That was the purpose of government. The Holy Prophet passed away after expanding that government to cover most of Arabia at his time. If Amirul Mu'mineen salawatullah alayhi at that time would have given priority to government and said, oh, the Prophet told me I need to govern, the Prophet set up Ghadir to tell the whole world that I am supposed to be the Khalifa and the successor of the Holy Prophet afterwards, what would have happened would have been devastating and a disaster for the deen of the people. Why? It's a long story. We have to talk at least for 45 minutes describing the scene and understanding how, if the Imam would have taken to the sword without the support of the people that he wanted around 40 people according to some of the accounts. He wanted 40 people, only 40 people to come and support him. If they would have come and supported him, it would have been a different situation. But single-handedly, if he would have risen, if he would have taken to the sword with the very few 4 people that were around him, it would have caused a split between the core followers of the Holy Prophet, and you would not have seen Islam at all today. No Shia, no Sunni. Nothing would have been left. Amir al-Mu'mineen remained silent to preserve the deen of the Holy Prophet. He saw what they did to the daughter of the Holy Prophet, and he was silent because he wanted to save the deen of the people. There's something that I've heard. Some of the Ahlul Sunnah who are less aware of the realities of history, most of actually Ahlul Sunnah, are Ahlul Sunnah because they think that they have that truth. They think that that is the truth. That's the way they've been taught. I say, oh, what you guys, the Shia, say about what happened to the daughter of the Holy Prophet after the Holy Prophet can't be true. Why? So they said, look, are you saying Ali watched this and was silent? Ali let this happen to the daughter of the Holy Prophet and he was silent? Impossible. And what we say is, yes, that's the painful part. That is why it's so painful. Okay? That for the sake of the deen of the people, Ali sees it and he has to remain silent. That's what kills one. That's what burns the heart. Deen takes precedence. He wants the deen to remain with the people. This is based on natural law. So Amir al-Mu'mineen remains silent. He doesn't just remain silent. He doesn't take to his house and sit there and just worship and pray and tasbih, subhanallah, and things like that. No, he's involved. Based on, again, Nahjul Balagha and history, he is involved. He tries to behind the scene without being the head figure that he was supposed to be. He tried as much as possible to keep the Khilafah within the boundaries of Islam, to keep the deen of the people together. And as he describes it in Nahjul Balagha, saying, I was patient with a bone stuck in my throat and a thorn in my eye. Difficult. With all that difficulty, he took on that responsibility. It's because of Ali that Islam remains today. This is without any exaggeration. We're not talking about Shia remaining today. Islam remaining in its entirety is due to the efforts of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Ahlul Bayt. If you have what remains of the salat of even Ahlul Sunnah, it's because of the efforts of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Ahlul Bayt, without any exaggeration. I'm willing to prove it historically. If it was not for what the Ahlul Bayt did, the fabricated reports, the fabricated accounts of what the Holy Prophet has done or said would have completely destroyed Islam. What prevented that from happening was the efforts of the Ahlul Bayt. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, he comes to power now that the circumstances are ready for him to be able to bring closer to the deen of the Holy Prophet the people. Since they have now come to him, he took on the responsibility, again, to preserve the deen of the people. Government in and of itself, when you look at government without it being an instrument that is going to preserve the deen of the people, Amir al-Mu'mineen says ruling over you is less worthy than the most beat up shoe that you can think of. Or in another, when he wants to really belittle government in itself without it being the instrument for akhirah, he says government over you is less worthwhile than the snot of a goat. That's how worthless it is. Government in itself is like that. He doesn't like government in itself. It's because it is a tool that if it's in the wrong hands, they will use it to deviate the believers from the right path. And if it's in the right hands, it will allow the believers to grow spiritually and prosper. So when he has the opportunity, he sees it. 2, uphold the deen. The verse of the Holy Quran says, the believers are الَّذِينَ إِن مَكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ. If we give them the ability to rule on the earth, they will uphold prayer. That's the purpose of it. Alright, so as long as he was able to do it, he took it on. The assassin Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, he continues that. But when he sees that if we want to insist on preserving government, what will end up happening is that Muawiyah and his people will come, they'll have the very companions of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba kill the Imam along with Imam al-Hussein, along with all the companions, and finish off Islam right there. And then Muawiyah would come in, change history for us, and nothing would have remained. If Imam Hassan would have done what Imam al-Hussein did, not only would it not have preserved the deen, it would have actually demolished deen altogether. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba let people call him whatever they wanted to preserve the deen. Part of the madlumiyah of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, I always say this because it's really painful. It's really painful. Not only in his life did they call him loads of different things, the Shia even, the followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Even today, one of his madlumiyahs, out of the 5, the Holy Prophet, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Lady Fatima al-Zahra, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, the least respected, the least knowledge that the Shia have is with regards to Imam Hassan. You don't even know what he did. What did he do? The only thing we hear, if anything, is just the truth. And then on his shahada, we say, oh, his wife poisoned him. Why did she poison him? Why did they kill him? Was he sitting in the house saying tasbih? How much do you owe him? How much do we owe him? Too much. And unfortunately, we're not aware. We're not aware. Imam Hassan bought that. All those name callings, all those evil things that were said to him. People feeling that God forbid, God forbid, God forbid, he's a loser, he's afraid to fight. He doesn't know how to fight. He doesn't know how to govern. He doesn't have what it takes. Al-ayadu billah. So let them say all of this. But for the deen of all of you, I'm going to do this. It was brave to accept the truth. It wouldn't have been brave to allow for Muawiyah to kill him and finish his life. That wouldn't have been brave. Imam Hussein salamullah alayhi, I didn't put this in there, during this time, the 20 years, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein realized that the biggest problem you're having is that those real believers, those with the real deen in them that needed to be there, to be the foundations based on whom that government is going to find support in and be able to maintain itself and move in the right direction, those foundations are not there. They started working to try to create those believers again. Almost from scratch. Not completely from scratch, but almost. A lot of the people were no longer those real believers. There were serious issues, which was big. Imam Hussein continued that for 10 years. There's a very secret and underground movement. Imam Hussein has his connection with the people in Kufa, all of the Imams in Medina. He has his connections there. He tries to influence them positively, train them. But when Yazid comes in, Imam Hussein realizes, look, this is reached a stage that if Yazid comes to power and I want to work with these individual souls, to create individual believers, Yazid's power and authority and the way he is will destroy religion in its entirety. That's why Imam Hassan said, we have got to make a serious impression at this time. He left Medina to Mecca for a number of months until the Hajj from Rajab. He propagated, especially after the month of Ramadan, Shawwal, the Qa'dah, and the Hajj. These are the months that the believers start gathering in Mecca. Imam al-Hussein speaks to people, gives lectures. Believers coming from all over the Muslim empire. So he has this opportunity to deliver these talks and try to gather support, waken the people up. And it's during this time that he receives the letters from the people of Kufa, and he goes over there. So that if the people actually support him, and if they would have, things would have been very different, that he was going to set up government. For what purpose? Again, to preserve the deen. And if they didn't support him, he had to not pledge allegiance at all, no signing of any truce, none of that, because that would have been the complete destruction of deen. There wouldn't have been any believers remaining after that. He created a very, very, very strong wave that after the event of Ashura, people started really waking up. These same people, these same individuals that were not willing to take risks and put their lives in danger are now coming out and putting their lives in danger and getting killed. You have a few movements that happen there. It's because the shock that Imam al-Hussein created in that society, along with the lady Zainab and the family. Okay, all of that was necessary. And we're trying to run through this very quickly to say, in all of this, wherever they accepted government, wherever they fought for government, whenever they spoke to people, top priority is deen. Okay. Whenever these two came together, deen and government, they went for it. Whenever government meant no deen, said leave it. We're not going to fight for it. There's a lot to learn from this. The first thing I want to get to from this is the following. If the main thing, the most important thing that the Ahlul Bayt worked for, Salamullah alayhim ajma'in, was real deen, okay, then we have got to make sure we have got real deen in us. If Imam al-Hussein was trying to create individuals with real deen in them at that time, then if we're awaiting the coming of the Imam of our time, we have got to start developing a real deen in ourselves. What's the difference between real deen and superficial deen? Ritualistic deen. There's a huge difference between them. Deen is not the practices, it's not the rituals in and of themselves. There's something that has got to be within. The problem that existed at that time, and Imam al-Hussein correctly felt the fear and the threat of this problem, was that all the rituals pretty much were there. But Islam had been stripped of its essence. What is that essence? The essence which is within is your direction in life. Your direction in life. Is your direction towards the divine, towards God, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything else, or everything in your life is defined based on that? Or is your life based on the dunya, and everything is based on that? Sometimes we think we're believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the Holy Prophet, in the Ahlul Bayt. We beat our chest. But everything is for the dunya. When you want to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God, I have this examination, can you please? I need a car, I don't have a car, I don't have this, I'm dealing with financial circumstances, illnesses. These are the only requests that we have. The same way that the Hindus and the Sikh and the Christians and others have certain rituals when they knew, or even the Mushrikeen at the time of the Prophet had certain rituals. Every nation has their own rituals. When they need something, people in the West that are completely atheists, they have lucky charms, some of them, okay? When they feel they need a bit of that, they take these measures. Okay? Sometimes deen for us is that. Sometimes my deen is because I come from a background, from a family that I need to preserve my religious identity to be able to have respect. That's deen for me. It's dunya. This is not deen. Deen is your direction. It comes from the soul. That verse that we said, when it wants to say who the righteous are, or what righteousness is, it says, Man amana billahi wal yawmil akhir. First, it's iman. The reason why practice is there, it's based on iman. It comes out of iman. It's because this person feels that God is present, and God is the authority. He is the creator. He is the Rabb. He is the Malik. He is the owner of everything. Let me read you a hadith of a real believer. Inside of salawat, please. This is found in Al-Kafi. And I believe the chapter was Haqiqatul Iman. But the hadith is the following. It says, An Abi Basir, An Abi Abdullah alayhi salatu wasalam. Abu Basir, one of the companions of Imam Sadiq, salamullah alayhi, says this and relates this to us. He says, استقبل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله حارثة بن مالك بن النعمان الأنصاري. The Holy Prophet went towards and faced and went to this individual, one of the Ansar. His name is Harithah ibn Malik ibn Nu'man. فقال له, the Holy Prophet said to this individual, كيف أنت يا حارث ibn Malik, يا حارثة ibn Malik? How are you? A casual, regular question that we would ask. فقال, Harithah says, يا رسول الله, مؤمن حقا. I have become a true believer. Let me put this, if anybody has the question, or sometimes we see this. Sometimes people who feel they've been able to make some form of religious progress, they go and tell different people about that. I want to make sure we don't take that message from this. The Holy Prophet is asking this companion. The trainer is asking this companion. The one who's supposed to guide this companion is asking him. And this companion is telling his master how he feels in order for his master, the Holy Prophet, to correct any mistakes or guide him further. If you have a good experience, you went for ziyarah, you shed tears, you prayed night prayer, you did this, don't go tell the whole world. It shouldn't be taken from this. The Holy Prophet is asking him, he is the master asking. He is the trainer who's asking. And therefore this person is responding in this way. This is مُؤْمِنٌ حَقًّا, a true believer. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله لكل شيء حقيقة فما حقيقة قولك. So everything, in my words, paraphrasing here, has got some evident reality to it. There is evidence for everything. What is the evidence of what you're saying? How do you say, I have real faith? فقال يا رسول الله عزفت نفسي عن الدنيا. The first thing is, my nafs, okay, we said you're either towards the divine, that's your direction, or you're towards the dunya, that's your direction. The rituals do not define which one you are. It's within that defines which you are. He says, عزفت نفسي عن الدنيا. My nafs, my soul is no longer attracted to the dunya, it has left the dunya. Okay. In what way? He says, فأسهرت ليلي وأظمأت هواجري. If I'm reading this correctly. He says, I stay up in the night. Ahlul Dunya are awake at the beginning part of the night in laughter, in, God forbid, drinking, in watching television, in activities that are useless at best, if not devastating to the heart. They waste that part of the night in activities that are at best just do not have the remembrance of God in them. Sometimes beyond that, they push us away from the remembrance of God. For this person, they are up when these shayateen are asleep. 1, 2 a.m. where everybody is now naked and they go to bed now, these believers now get up. This believer gets up at that point. وَكَأَنِّي أَنْظُرُ إِلَىٰ عَرْشِ رَبِّي وَقَدْ وُضِعَ لِلْحِسَابِ. It's as though I am watching the throne of my Lord and it has been set up for judgment. Okay, it's a very scary scene. If the throne of the divine is set up for judgment, I'm going to be judged. How will you feel? When you walk into an examination as a child, it's kind of that feeling. Or kind of, that's just to give an essence of that. But it's very, very, very seriously fearful if we picture what that is. He says, it's as though I am seeing the throne of the divine set up for judgment. وَكَأَنِّي أَنْظُرُ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ يَتَزَاوَرُونَ فِي الْجَنَّةِ. It's as though I'm seeing, I'm seeing the believers in Jannah either visiting each other, وَكَأَنِّي أَسْمَعُ عِوَاءَ أَهْلِ النَّارِ, and it's as though I'm hearing the cries of the disbelievers in hellfire. فقال له رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله, the Holy Prophet tells him, عَبْدٌ نَوَّرَ اللَّهُ قَلْبَهُ. This is a believer that God has enlightened their hearts. Absart, you have seen the truth. You have that basira. Fathful. Be steadfast on this. You've gotten it, don't give it up. In other words, you need to continue. Be careful, be wary. This is a great blessing that God has given you. Don't lose it. All of that hadith, aside this last passage, is an amazing one. فَقَالَ, and the Holy Prophet told him this. Make sure you don't lose it. You know what he says? He says, Ya Rasulullah, ud'u Allah li. I want you to ask God to give me something. What is it? أن يرزقني الشهادة معك. That God gives me the privilege of dying in His way with you. فقال صلى الله عليه وآله, the Holy Prophet said, اللهم ارزق حارثة الشهادة. Saying in a matter of a few days there was a battle, he went, he fought, he killed a few people, then he got killed in that battle as well. You know why this is something to keep in mind? This last part of it is very special. is that all the other signs that he mentioned of his relationship with God and that true Iman, all of that aside, this is one of the signs of real Iman that is within the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In a number of verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says, gives us a message. I'm going to quote one of them in Surah Al-Jumu'ah. In Surah Al-Jumu'ah. One of the claims the Jews used to make was that they were special. They were special people that God privileged them. And to an extent that was true, but it didn't mean that they were great people regardless of what they did and they're not going to go to hell. That's what the Jews claim. So we ain't going to hell. Everybody else will and we will not. In Surah Al-Jumu'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ هَادُوا إِنْ زَعَمْتُمْ أَنَّكُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ لِلَّهِ مِنْ دُونِ النَّاسِ فَتَمَنَّوُا الْمَوْتِ إِنْ كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. It says, if you really believe you are awliya of the divine, you're special friends of God, you have a special relationship with God, then you should wish for death. Because that will be the end of the problems in this world. You'll be meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's scary about death? If you're really a wali of Allah, you wouldn't be afraid of death. You'll be waiting for that moment. This is what this person has. He says, Prophet, can you please ask that I meet my Lord in this way? I want to be killed fighting along your side for this cause. This is real faith, real Iman. We have got to develop this real Iman in our hearts. We've got to make sure we're not like the people of Karbala fighting against Imam al-Hussein when they said, let's finish this off before Dhuhr so we can pray right when the time comes in. Rituals. Kill the grandson of the Prophet early so we can pray to God as soon as we can. This is a really ritualistic thing. For the sake of, this is where the distinction. Umar ibn Sa'd, may Allah curse him, knew this. He's the son of one of the companions of the Holy Prophet. He's learned a lot of things about religion. But his direction in life has changed. He does the rituals, but his direction is the dunya. He says, look, I either have Jannah, I have God, or I have Ray. I have this very fertile land filled with riches. Which one? This one. He didn't leave his rituals. Everything justifies the goal. If your goal is the dunya, you can have, Amir al-Mu'mineen says this, that faith is not really there. Ad-din la'iqun ala alsinati. Deen is just something on the tongue. Subhanallah, have a tasbih 24/7. Subhanallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. That's it. This is deen. This is not deen. It has to be within. That has to be strengthened. Inshallah. Sallallahu alaykum. Ya Ahla Bayt وما وضع الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة ومهبط الألواح ومعادن الرحمن and blessings be upon you, my beloved Holy Prophet and Yahlul Bayt. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. It was in your homes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with guidance and revelation. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. Upon you descend angels day in and day out, seeking permission before entering upon you. Let's take our hearts to Karbala. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Mazlum. Sallallahu alayka أيها الشهيد بكربلاء عطشانا. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, my beloved Imam al-Hussein. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, my beloved oppressed Imam. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, the Imam that was slaughtered by the shores of the Euphrates. All his mouth was dry of thirst. Sallallahu alayhi. May Allah bless you. One of the things that happens in Kufa, try to picture the Ahlul Bayt in Kufa, in the palace of Ubaydullah bin Ziyad. The women and children have been gathered. I don't know if their hands are tied or how hard they are tied. Imam Zainul Abidin is present. There are many conversations that take place in the palace. At the end of the conversations, history reports, out of his anger and the want to show his victory, his arrogance, and show that he was victorious over his enemies, he was able to defeat them. He ordered for the noble and beloved head of Imam al-Hussein to be put on a spear and taken around the city of Kufa. One of the companions in Kufa One believer in Kufa says they were bringing this head around. I saw the noble head of Imam al-Hussein reciting the verse أم حسبت أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم كانوا من آياتنا عجبا. He recited the verse. Do you think that the people of the cave are of our very extraordinary signs? Seeing the head of Imam al-Hussein say this, he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, you are a greater sign of Allah. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad calls the people to the masjid. He starts to badmouth the Ahlul Bayt. He says, see how God has killed this Kadhab ibn Kadhab, this liar, the son of the liar. Referring to your beloved Imam al-Hussein in the masjid that Amir al-Mu'mineen used to be. One of the companions who is now blind, he hears this, he stands up, he says, you are the liar, the son of the liar, the son of the liar. O son of Marjana, belittling this person, Ubaydullah, I shall say, Imam al-Hussein still has some companions in Kufa. He could not take what was said with regards to Imam al-Hussein. From Ubaydullah, he protested, so they went and followed him, and Ubaydullah ordered his death. He met his master. We like to say to this companion, if you were not able to hear these words said with regards to Imam al-Hussein, how was the lady Zainab salamullahi alayha able to go on Tallu Zainabiyya when she heard the horse of Imam al-Hussein outside her tent, thinking her brother has come back from battle to say another farewell, going out to see the horses there without a rider, running towards the battlefield, wa Muhammadan wa Aliyah, arriving at Tallu Zainabiyya to see before her eyes والشمر جالس على صدره. What are you doing to my beloved brother? ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. الرحيم. الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين المنتجبين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين بتراب مقدمه الفداء. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the hastening and the return of our Imam, please recite the salawat. For his protection and well-being, recite the second one louder. Inshallah, each and every one of us becomes a true and close companion of our beloved Imam. Recite the third one even louder. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity that He provided for us this year to commemorate Muharram, to try to come together, remember Imam al-Hussein, benefit from his blessings, which is really what brings us all together, whether it's to speak or to hear or to recite. And we're all trying to benefit from this beloved Imam of ours. Tonight is the last talk that we have, so I'd like to bring the talks that we have had over the course of these few nights to something just a bit more practical. Otherwise, if we were, in order to develop that obedience of the Imam of our time, such that we would be able to identify and understand what he would want us to do and become better and better at that, perfect that skill of ours. If we would want to do that in order to then be obedient, we would have to study the lives of the Ahlul Bayt further and further. And even if we have 10, 15, 20 lectures, it's still not enough. Just a few concepts that put forth that were felt to be less attention. As we said, sometimes we feel that we focus on a particular scenario, a very limited scenario, and we don't understand the principle behind why a decision is made at a certain instance, and a very different decision is made by the very same Imam at a different circumstance. We get confused. And then we're not able to apply that and say why you're supposed to do this here and you're not supposed to do it elsewhere. Where you're supposed to be silent and it's wrong to speak. Where you're supposed to speak and it's wrong to be silent. Where you're being obedient to the Imam and being like Ammar ibn Yasir to express the truth and be very clear about it. Where you've got to be like Amirul Mu'mineen, who told Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, one of the companions of the Imam, that you shouldn't be speaking out against the Khulafa. We have an account about Abu Dhar al-Ghifari. One of the things that is said about him, especially during the time of Uthman, he was he couldn't hold himself. He saw wrong happening and he very passionately attacked it. He spoke very negatively of what was happening. And when we look at Imam al-Hussein, we say, oh yeah, you need to be like that. But Amir al-Mu'minin at the time, according to these accounts, will tell him, look, you need to calm down a bit. This is not the time for this. And he didn't listen. I don't want to say exactly everything he did was wrong. Sometimes we say this and then people have a misunderstanding. Coming here, the brother was saying that some people go to Syria and then they go to the grave of Ammar ibn Yasir and they disrespect him because he didn't stand for Amirul Mu'mineen Salamullah alayhi after the demise of the Holy Prophet. Yes, he made a mistake, but look at all the services he did afterwards. Compared to, I can say for myself, Ammar ibn Yasir is much better than I. Abu Dhar al-Ghifari is much better than I. But judging based on what Amir al-Mu'mineen said, what I learned from this part of what Abu Dhar did, he identified there is wrong, and he did have the right feeling about not being silent about it, but sometimes you have to be careful. Sometimes you have to be a little more quiet about it, or a little more lenient about your approach. Sometimes you're not supposed to be lenient. The thing that we were trying to get to, and we mentioned a couple of principles of that, is that we have to understand the principles that cause the Ahlul Bayt to take a harsh stance in a certain instance and give in another instance. We have to understand that. But, as I said, if we keep going with that, we're not going to be able to discuss all of those. I want to bring it to something that's very relevant to you and I, based on the last point that was mentioned, the last principle that was mentioned in the previous session. What was that principle? That principle was that the Ahlul Bayt, Salamullah alayhim ajma'een, from the Holy Prophet all the way to the Imam of our time, what they consider most important, in fact it's on top of their priority list, is the preservation and the expansion and the spread of deen in people. And not just a ritualistic deen, rather a deen that is deep-rooted in ourselves. We left off on this point. He said, what we first, or one of the first points to take from that, if that's the priority of the Imam of our time, if that was the priority of the Holy Prophet, as we saw in Mecca, in Medina, Amirul Mu'mineen, and so on and so forth, then we have to help them out by first bringing that type of deen within ourselves. This is where we left off. What I want to say tonight is related to this. How do we do this? How do we bring the real deen into our lives? How do we make that deen something that's actually there within? How can we be able to change ourselves in a way where we wouldn't be treating religion as a ritual the way the ones who killed Imam al-Hussein treated it as a ritual? They didn't have the essence of deen within them. How do we do this? Let me explain something with regards to Imam al-Hussein and why. We explained briefly. We said that Imam al-Hussein did this, he stood up in order to preserve that deen. And the circumstances had gotten to a point where if he wouldn't have stood up in this way, if he wouldn't have objected and said, I'm not even willing to pledge allegiance, no truce, no nothing, deen would have been demolished completely. What were those circumstances that caused this? Part of it is going to be helpful in understanding the points that I'm going to be mentioning about what we need to do. First, we have to figure out what the real problem is. What is the disease that causes us to become believers on a superficial level? What is the disease? The disease was, from the time of the Khulafa, the companions of the Holy Prophet, the ones who fought the battles, the ones who gave everything for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they split their property and their wealth with their brethren that they just came to know, and simply because of Islam, they split what they had. The Ansar and the Muhajirin moved to Medina. They had been stripped of everything they had. They just came alone. If they had any property in the first place, when they came over to Medina, they didn't have any of it with them. They didn't have any money to live off of. They didn't have a place to stay at. They didn't have anything. The Holy Prophet said, these are your brothers. Everybody needs to pick a brother. They assigned people to each other. And the brothers had this responsibility of sharing their property with one another. So the Madanis, the Ansar, split what they had. These people, it's a pretty serious matter. I don't know if we mentioned this before, but just thinking about this idea of being able to split. I have a house worth so many thousands of pounds, let's say, and a believer comes for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'd be willing to say, okay, half of this is actually yours. Not come over, visit me, stay with me for a while. No, this is actually half of it's yours. Okay. takes a lot of faith. It's not a joke. They gave their lives. In the Battle of Badr, they were going in thinking that, we really don't have much to stand against the kuffar with. They sacrificed. They really sacrificed. They sacrificed in order to preserve the life of the Holy Prophet. They weren't moving towards and working for gaining wealth, gaining money. That wasn't their objective in life. The objective was serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the culture that the Holy Prophet cultivated in Medina. After the Holy Prophet, this gradually started to change. It started to change, especially during the time of Uthman. What became prevalent was that the same companions of the Holy Prophet, which had developed the culture to work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and sacrifice what they had of this life in this world for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now it had kind of reversed. There was this culture that had started to develop early on during the time of the second Khalifa, but it got a lot worse during the time of Uthman, the third Khalifa, where everybody was looking for some way of being able to get a larger share of this wealth that's coming into the Muslim empire. This was the disease. This was why when Amir al-Mu'mineen came to power, this disease that existed in people, in the companions of the Holy Prophet, in the masses, each of them in their own way, they failed to conform with the government that they had voted for, they pledged allegiance to. They knew this was something that the Holy Prophet wanted because of this disease. Talha, Zubayr, others, they wanted a share of Khilafah, they wanted a share of some of the wealth that was coming in. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, no, that's not, you're not fit for the position. And this money is not mine to share with you guys the way you want me to give it to you. It's not mine. If you want some of mine, I'll give it to you. But this is not mine. This belongs to the believers. The believers, the masses, things got more and more difficult. I mean, if you fight one battle, then a second battle, then a third battle, you lose relatives, you lose family members. During the time of the Prophet, the culture was, this is a shaheed. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. This was the culture. Somebody died, you should be proud. They fought in the way of Allah and they acquired martyrdom. The culture now, at the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, because of all that was handed down in previous Khulafa, the culture has changed. They lose the person that brings food to their table. That's the way to look at it. It's not seeing that God is the one that provides sustenance anymore. It's my husband, my father, my brother is the one that's bringing food to the table. So when you lose that person, you start having a difficult time, they start complaining. They start feeling, well, at the time of Uthman, it wasn't like this. Why is Ali's time like this? Right? This disease of the dunya. It reached the stage that Imam al-Hussein realized himself that if this disease, which has become so deep-rooted, that the leaders of the Muslim community that should be leading them to the right direction, almost all of them have been poisoned by this, eventually that culture is completely going to be eliminated. the culture of working for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, considering the hereafter important. This is the disease. So if we're trying to look for something to do, if we want to combat this disease, this problem, which is one of the main things to try to resolve in ourselves in order to become those real and true believers, the ones who have that real deen in them, is to bring that back to what the Holy Prophet had presented. We need to develop that culture within ourselves first and foremost. What is that? The remembrance of Akhirah. Why is it that the verses of the Holy Quran constantly remind us of this? They say that, look, it's not enough for you to just believe in God. If you look at the verses of the Holy Quran, the principle of faith that is repeated most is what has to do with the Akhirah, with the hereafter, in different ways. Sometimes it talks about the punishment. Look at the verses of plenty of the surahs of the Holy Quran. Many of the small surahs of the Holy Quran, almost the objective is almost entirely to prove and remind about the concept of the hereafter, life after death. In Surah Amma Yatasa'alun, or An-Naba, Surah An-Naba. When you look at this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about an instance where there's asking about a very important news. What is that? There's hadith, I don't want to get into that. What I want to say is, after those first few verses, if we consider them not related to the concept of the hereafter, after that God talks about some of the things that are apparent. أَلَمْ نَجْعَلِ الْأَرْضَ مِهَادًا. Didn't we provide this earth for you guys to be able to live your lives? وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا. We made these mountains the way they are, sort of like nails, which has its own very important explanation. The importance of having these mountains, they're not recreational alone. It's very important. The very fact that we can live on earth partially has to do with many elements that are there. One of them is the presence of these mountains. So he continues, he says, look at these mountains that I have provided for you. Look at the heavens, look at this. I have given you all of these. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the hereafter. And the rest of the verses become catered to the hereafter. It talks about hellfire for the disbelievers, and it talks about paradise for the believers. And then it talks about the day of judgment again. Inna yawma al-fasli kana miqata. That's the time that we're going to be eating. This verse, Surah Nazi'at, Surah Abbas, Surah Takwir, Surah Infitar. The verses of Surah Baqarah, starting right at the beginning, it says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Who are the muttaqeen? الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةِ. Where is it at? I think I'm getting the wording wrong. It says a little further down that one of the main elements within the thought of the believers is belief in the hereafter. Constantly, constantly, constantly. In fact, the verse that we mentioned later on in Surah Baqarah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. When he wants to say who the real person is, the real believer is, he says, وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. Day of judgment. What we have in the verses of the Holy Quran, in the instructions of the ma'sumin, is a constant reminder of the hereafter. I'll give you a couple of examples. Other than the verses, we talked about the verses a bit briefly. When Amir al-Mu'mineen gains authority again, when he's asked to lead and people pledge allegiance with him, one of the things that he constantly reminds himself, and he reminds the people, and he reminds his governors in the different regions, is remembrance of the Day of Judgment. One of the stories that has been, one of the accounts that can teach us a bit. We don't remember the Day of Judgment like this, brothers. Usually when we remember the Day of Judgment, when we remember the hereafter, it is again ritualistic. You read a verse of the Quran, many of these verses, surahs that I have mentioned, you have recited. You have read many of these surahs. We all read them. Which one of the surahs of the Quran doesn't one way or the other talk about the Day of Judgment? But why isn't there a real remembrance? Say Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullah alayhi. You may have heard the story before. I think it's something that teaches us a very good lesson on this. Amir al-Mu'mineen, this Ma'asum, says that he would go and help the needy at night in Kufa. These same people that we mentioned, the hardships of war and battle, caused them to feel and have negative feelings towards Amir al-Mu'mineen, to the extent that sometimes they may have even, some did, curse Amir al-Mu'mineen. He would, in a very humble way, go and help these very same people. Very same people. In one instance, there was a widow that was complaining because her husband had died in one of the battles of Noor. Amir al-Mu'mineen sees this widow trying to carry, I'm not sure if it's wheat, something, water, something she wants to carry home. Amir al-Mu'mineen helps her out. And he speaks to her on the way. And she complains. Ali has done this and done that. My husband is killed because of him. My children are orphans now. I have a number of children. Amir al-Mu'mineen listens to all of that. He goes into the house. He sets up the oven while it's heating up. He plays with the children. These are important lessons themselves, but I don't want to focus on this. The account says that he even bent down and acted like a goat or a sheep and let the kids ride on him. Okay? One of the accounts says he even made the sound. Sometimes you think that Amir al-Mu'mineen wouldn't do that. He made the sound for the kids, for these orphans to smile. Okay? For these orphans to feel joy in them. Then when he played with them and he got all happy and the widow is happy that someone is helping her out, he goes to the oven. Amir al-Mu'mineen Mawla al-Muwahhideen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, the one who is 100% innocent of any sin, goes to this fire and says, Ali, feel the heat. Okay? Feel the heat. And be reminded of the heat of hellfire. Amir al-Mu'mineen, during this time, has taught his companion Humay ibn Ziyad al-Nakha'i Du'a al-Humay. The reason why you call it Dua Humayd is because Imam taught Humayd ibn Ziyad al-Nakhai. It's the name of this individual. In this dua, how many times do you talk about hellfire? I think we mentioned this point before. It's very unfortunate that we read this dua and we don't really allow it to be absorbed in our heart, to feel that we're speaking to Allah in this way. At least read the dua and try to feel the way somewhat how Amir al-Mu'mineen used to recite this dua. Coming from within. When he says, "Oh Allah, will you bring hellfire to the face and the forehead that is prostrated for you? The tongue that has spoken of your tawheed truthfully." He's serious about this matter. He's not kidding. He's not acting like he has fear of the hereafter. He's reminding himself and teaching us to remind ourselves on a weekly, on a daily basis of the hereafter. In the world we're living in, there is almost zero remembrance of the hereafter. We're almost disbelievers in the hereafter. If we even ask questions, it's some intellectual question about the hereafter. Where is the feeling that, oh, this is actually coming my way? If one really feels that I am moving towards my end, different feeling. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We are currently returning to Him. If you have an exam tomorrow, you wouldn't be here. Okay? You'd be preparing for your exam. In fact, if you have one next week, you wouldn't be here. And these are simple exams. Who cares? You failed one exam, so what? We'll take it again. That examination, there is no second time. You only have this one chance. That's it. The Day of Judgment is called Yawmul Hasra. Everyone is going to be regretting. What did I do with my youth? How did I spend my hours? How did I spend my days? What did I focus on? These are serious questions that are going to be asked. In one of the things that Imam Sajjad Salamullah alayhi does again, is the same thing. Read these du'as. Dua Abu Hamza Sodagar. It is usually recited in the month of Ramadan because it is most recommended that it's not limited to that. Pick it up, read it tonight if you get some time. It's a pretty long dua. You probably won't be able to read the whole thing. And there's no reason to read the whole thing, okay? Sometimes we pick it up like, oh my God, 15 pages. I'm not going to read this. It takes too long. Don't read the whole thing. Read one page. Read 5 lines. Contemplate on it. Reflect on it. In this dua, the Imam says to Allah, "Oh Allah, why should I not cry for what has come upon me and what I have brought upon myself? Mali la abki. Why shouldn't I cry for myself? And I have Nakir and Munkir that will be asking me serious questions."
Allahu Akbar.
You really feel this is coming? Or do we think it's a fantasy? Amir al-Mu'mineen does this. He constantly He tries to remind the believers, look, you have the hereafter coming, you have the hellfire there. We have to develop this spirit, this understanding in ourselves. We have to feel that every word I say I will be held accountable for every single word that I am going to say, and I'm saying. Every single word. There's one story, I haven't checked this and see how reliable it is, but the idea behind the story is very true. This is the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave 2 dinar to Salman and 2 dinar to Abu Dhar. It was a gift, right? It was given for free. They took it. They took it after a few days. On a hot day, the Holy Prophet wanted to teach them something about the hereafter, to make them realize how serious it is. On a hot day, I don't know if you've been for Hajj, in the summer it gets pretty hot. I've been there in autumn and it was very hot. God knows how hot it gets in the summer. On a hot summer day, on a stone the sun has been blazing on, which gets pretty hot, the Holy Prophet tells Abu Dhar, go stand on the stone without your shoes. It's hot, it's painful. And he said, tell me, what did you do with the 2 dinar that I gave you? So he's jumping up and down and explaining, I did this with it, I bought this, and I did that, and so on and so forth. He's explaining. It took him a few minutes, and his feet were burning during this time. After he came down, and none of what he did was haram, by the way. He didn't do anything haram with that. Just being asked this question, standing on this hot stone. He told Salman to go up there. Salman went up there. He said, Salman, what did you do with it? He said, I gave it in the way of Allah and came down. What is this story for? There is accountability for the halal that we do, and we make use of the blessings that have been provided for us. The Day of Judgment itself is something to fear. See, one of the verses that talks about the Day of Judgment and that all the believers will be going around hellfire. The verse says, إِن مِّنْهُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا. It says everybody will enter it, but the explanation is that they don't enter the fire itself, but they're around it. It says that when this verse was revealed, the Holy Prophet said, this verse caused me to age a lot quicker. Just hearing this idea. Much less sins. If we have this thought, this belief, this understanding of the hereafter, it'll change our approach. So number one, remembering the hereafter. All these du'as, these verses are for that. We just don't make use of them. Dua Kumail has become a ritual. Recitation of the Quran, we don't even have that. Alhamdulillah, it seems everything else takes precedence. Quran is not there. Hadith says a Shia of Amirul Mu'mineen at least 50 verses a day. When we recite this, it should be causing us to think, shiver. So one is remembering the hereafter. Another thing that Amirul Mu'mineen does, and we need to learn from this, is that he is constantly reminding the believers of the reality of the dunya that we are in. This is also something that's very important. We shouldn't just remember the hereafter. We got to understand the reality of the dunya that we are in. Especially out here, brothers and sisters. The dunya that the Khulafa fought for, the dunya that Muawiyah fought for, the dunya that Umar ibn Sa'd fought for, Shimr fought for, they did all the evil they did for that dunya, compared to the standard life you have now is nothing. Today you enter the streets, everything is just calling you to the dunya. Everything. Every billboard, you go to school, you go out of the, you go anywhere, everything is calling you to the dunya, the glamour of the dunya. It's become a lot more glamorous. Before they just had a house made out of stone. You look at the ruins, even if you make them to look really nice, they still look nothing compared to the homes that exist today. And there's this competition that exists. The society we live in has this competition. Amir al-Mu'mineen talks about the reality of this dunya. He, in his own conduct, shows that this means nothing. This is so little, so insignificant, so worthless. This is why he dresses those ragged clothes at his time. Like everybody is trying to have better looking clothes on. He said, I'm not going to get into that race. I'm going to take the exact opposite direction. If we would see Amir al-Mu'mineen today on the streets of London the way he used to dress at that time, none of us would have think that he is, or thought that he is Amir al-Mu'mineen. The way he speaks of the dunya, the way he speaks of our relationship with the dunya. What is this temporary life? It's very temporary life. All the desires, it's just illusions. That's why the Quran calls it إِنَّمَا الدُّنْيَا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ. It's just an illusion. Just an illusion. You work so much and you get money and so on and so forth, and you buy something. You buy a gadget, a phone, or whatever. After a short while, what happened? It doesn't have the same feel that it had before. In a short period of time. You get the new iPhone, and in a few months, then they release the next version. You're like, okay, I gotta get that one. It loses the feel. Okay. You keep getting things and buying things, and what's all this for? It's very childish. Very childish. So understanding the reality of the dunya, looking at some of the khutbahs, some of the sermons of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and thinking about it ourselves, the temporariness of this dunya. How so much importance is given to this life of the dunya, and it's truly worthless. Truly worthless. Amir al-Mu'mineen bi Ahlul Bayt, to an extent above something that we can usually do, but as a practice to try to get themselves detached of this dunya and realize how insignificant, how worthless it is. So they don't get attached to the illusions of the dunya. They used to give large sums of money to charity. Sometimes they just split all of what they had and gave half of it away as charity. Sometimes when they were struggling, we've heard the stories in the Quran, Surah Al-Insan. They had nothing but just a few loaves of, or one every day was one loaf of bread. And even that they gave away. Give in order to we get detached of this dunya. You understand how worthless it is. A third point which is very important in trying to foster this spirit that the Ahlul Bayt wanted us to have in us, that real faith, is to try to spend minutes, moments on a daily basis and have a real connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Holy Quran that the prayer is supposed to be there for dhikr, for remembrance. There's supposed to be an actual connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's supposed to cause the proximity of the divine, getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Unfortunately, many times prayer is not like that. Prayer does not have that effect. Loads of thoughts come to us during prayer, and we do not understand that we are praying. For that reason, there's something else that we've got to do on a daily basis. We've got to spend some special time, sit down and try to make that real connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You got to do that. Recite salawat, please. So we have all these opportunities during the day. Every opportunity of prayer has got to be like that. Every prayer should be a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every recitation of the Quran should be a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, we should grow beyond this and try to at least move in this direction to become similar to the Ahlul Bayt, where that verse says, with regards to the Ahlul Bayt in Surah Noor, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, رِجَالٌ لَا تُلْهِيهِمْ تِجَارَةٌ وَلَا بَيْعٌ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. They're in constant remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So, on top of the prayer, the 5 daily prayers, and the du'as, and the nafilas that we're not really part of, unfortunately, the recitation of the Quran, even while they're at the workplace, they're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Should try to move in this direction. But there's a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet, in the middle of the night, you need to get up to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the night prayers. And what is the reason behind that? The reason is, as the verse itself explains, that during the day people get busy, their thoughts are very busy. Concentrating is very difficult. In the middle of the night, getting up and trying to have a connection with the divine, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is going to be different. It will not have the same touch of the daily routines and thoughts going all over the place. What I want to take from that is this: whether it's before Fajr or some other time, sometimes it's difficult at the beginning to get used to this practice. It's difficult. We should have it, but it's difficult. So what can we do instead? But something that can start us up, is to have some minutes during the day to make that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The cause of that connection, or what's going to make that connection a real connection, is something that Amir al-Mu'mineen tells us. Amir al-Mu'mineen says that there is no good in a عبادة لا خير في عبادة ليس فيها تفكر. There is no good in an ibadah, in a worship that does not have thought in it, concentration, realizing what we're doing. Even if it's briefly, focus, speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, beg Him for help, ask Him for serious help. This is also something we need to do. The third thing that we need to do. Recite salawat, please. And lastly, trying to have a tawassul with the Ahlul Bayt. If we can have it on a daily basis, regularly, a real tawassul, again, not just reading a ziyarah, a real tawassul, trying to connect with the Ahlul Bayt, this is going to cause the combination of all of this. Those reminders of the hereafter, understanding where we are, understanding the dunya, the temporariness of the dunya, trying to have that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with the Ahlul Bayt is going to help us, hopefully, take some practical steps in that direction, so that it hits us, we become sensitive again. Our focus and our attention isn't only on the dunya. We've got to try to move in a direction that our attention is only on God. There are many instances where in our communities we're not like this, and hopefully, I won't take any longer, hopefully we'll move in that direction, inshallah. Tonight is the last night of the talks and the lectures here. And what I like to do for the masa'ib is something a bit unusual for this time of the year and this season. Usually in this season everybody remembers Imam al-Hussein salamullah alayhi. But since this is the last night, I'd like to remember a different individual. I would like to remember as something to wrap up the sessions that I've had here at least, to go to the door of the mother of Imam al-Hussein salamullah alayhi, inshallah. Recite salawat. So that inshallah we ask her to accept the tawassulat, to accept the commemorations, to help us move closer to her children, her husband, her father, inshallah. As-salamu alaykum ya ahla bayt وما وضع الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة ومهبط الواحد ومعدن الرحمة وخزان العلم ومنتهى الخير. Inshallah, one of these years would be able to properly visit the A'imma in Medina without the officials in that part of the world preventing us. Hopefully we'd be able to recite this ziyarah that I read the few first lines, Ziyarat Jami'a Kabira, without any disturbance altogether, outside of Baqi, in the masjid of the Holy Prophet. Inshallah, one of these years we'll be seeing that the Shia are able Build a shrine for the Imams in Baqi. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. My beloved Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. It was in your homes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with guidance and revelation. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. Angels descend upon you day in and day out, seeking permission before entering upon you. Sallallahu alayhi ya mumtahanatu امتحنك الله قبل أن خلقك فوجدك لما امتحنك صابرا. صلى الله عليك يا قرة عين الرسول. صلى الله عليك أيتها المظلومة المغصوبة حقها. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. My beloved lady Fatima Zahra, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. My beloved oppressed lady, when can we see the day that we're able to know where the grave of the mother of the Sadat is? For now we would have to go and search in the back alleys of Medina, in Masjid al-Nabi, in Baqi, trying to figure out where the grave of the lady Fatima Zahra is. Sallallahu alayhi. How can I speak of this noble lady and what happened to her after the demise of the Holy Prophet? Sallallahu alayhi. The Lady Fatima Zahra, salamullahi alayha, gave everything she had to protect the wilaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen. She took all the difficulties and hardships to be able to preserve the respect for Amir al-Mu'mineen. They say we'll have a few glimpses of that history When they came behind the door of the lady Fatima Zahra, she bravely stood behind the door to prevent them from coming in to take Amir al-Mu'mineen to the masjid. They very cowardly put the door on fire. They came in where the voice was heard, Ya fiddatu khudini fidda Imagine the lady Fatima Zahra being injured in that way. I don't know exactly how the pain would have been. According to some accounts, she's even lost her baby. And when they came and took Amir al-Mu'mineen going towards the masjid, some accounts say the lady Fatima Zahra had gone unconscious due to the beatings. I said all this account for this line, brothers and sisters. It says when the lady was conscious again, she did not say, Fidda, I am in pain. She did not say, Fidda, what happened to my baby? She said, Fidda, Aina Ali. Where did they take Ali? Every time she went to the masjid, she spoke those very strong words. She felt and she got the disrespects that she got. All of that was to protect the Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imagine what they say the last day of the life of the lady Fatima Zahra. And they say Amir al-Mu'mineen was in the masjid. And they sent Imam Hassan and Imam al-Hussein to go and tell your father, if you want to see Fatima alive, come soon. Amir al-Mu'mineen, as fast as he could, came to the house, sat beside the body of the lady Fatima Zahra. Fatima, the salams from me to you. They say he did not hear any response. He said, Fatima, and Ali, I'm Ali. Do you not want to respond to me? Or do you want to abandon me the way the people of Medina have? The last moments, all of this was for this line. They say, look what happens to the heart of Amir al-Mu'mineen. They say the lady Fatima Zahra says, Ya Ali, my father has told me the worst thing that can happen for a woman is that she leaves this world and her husband is not pleased with her. Says Ali, if you've seen anything wrong from me, forgive me. Just imagine what that does to the heart of Ali. After protect the Amir al-Mu'mineen. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الزهراء وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها السر المستودع فيها لك يا الله 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 يا رحمن يا رحيم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك وعلى محبة أوليائك يا الله. We ask you by the right and the truth of the Lady Fatima al-Zahra that you hasten the return of our Imam. Ya Allah, we ask you by the right of this lady that you help us become the true companions and followers and soldiers of her son, the Mahdi. Ya Allah, we ask you to prolong the life of and protect all those helping the cause of Islam, especially the Maharaja, especially the leader. Ya Allah, I have many sins that prevent me from seeing my Imam, from getting close to my Imam, from getting close to you. I ask you, I know I have no position and station with you. I ask you by the right and the truth of the Lady Fatima al-Zahra, you forgive me and all of us of our sins. We ask you to forgive our parents, our grandparents, our relatives, all believers, those who are alive, those who left this world of their sins. Ya Allah, we all have hajat, we have needs. Some of our relatives, maybe even some of those present here, are suffering from illnesses. There are believers in prisons unjustly, in Bahrain, in Saudi Arabia, elsewhere in the world. Believers are getting killed, suffering hardships. We ask you, by the right and the truth of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, that you grant all believers, especially those in this majlis and their relatives, you grant all of them what they need, what they ask for, their hajat, cure their ill, release all the prisoners of Islam that are unjustly imprisoned. Ya Allah, we have tried in this month to commemorate Imam al-Hussein. We tried to do what we could. Ya Fatima al-Zahra, we tried to do what we could to commemorate your son's shahada. We ask you to accept. Ya Allah, we ask you to accept by the right of the Lady Fatima al-Zahra. We ask you, Ya Allah, to relieve all the people of the world of the oppressions they're facing. النبي وآله رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات. He recited the verse, do you think that the people of the cave are of our very extraordinary size? Seeing the head of Imam al-Hussein say this, he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, you are a greater sign of Allah. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad calls the people to the masjid. He starts to badmouth the Ahlul Bayt. He says, see how God has killed this Kadhab ibn Kadhab, this liar, the son of the liar. Referring to your beloved Imam al-Hussein in the masjid that Amir al-Mu'mineen used to be. One of the companions who is now blind, he hears this, he stands up, he says, you are the liar, the son of the liar, the son of the liar. O son of Marjana, belittling this person, Ubaydullah, I shall say, Imam al-Hussein still has some companions in Kufa. He could not take what was said with regards to Imam al-Hussein. From Ubaydullah, he protested, so they went and followed him, and Ubaydullah ordered his death. He met his master. We like to say to this companion, if you were not able to hear these words said with regards to Imam al-Hussein, how was the lady Zainab salamullahi alayha able to go on Tallu Zainabiyya when she heard the horse of Imam al-Hussein outside her tent, thinking her brother has come back from battle to say another farewell, going out to see the horses there without a rider, running towards the battlefield, wa Muhammadan wa Aliyah, arriving at Tallu Zainabiyya to see before her eyes was Shimru Jalisun ala sadrim. What are you doing to my beloved brother? ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون